Yes, now I've got to praise you again, Douglas, because you have written a fantastic column for morons, for the college kids cosplaying being part of some sort of a terror cell on campus, chanting for Intifada. You've been very good to educate them about what precisely an Intifada means, but I wonder, Douglas, whether they actually know what it means. They are aware of its full meaning and they're chanting it anyway. Many of them have said in recent months, decolonisation by any means necessary.
It's extraordinary, isn't it, Rita? I mean, you effectively see once again something you and I have talked about in a number of contexts, which is people who must either be sinister or silly. The sinister ones know what they're talking about when they chant for Intifada. The silly ones are chanting a slogan they clearly don't understand. So let me speak to the second ones for a moment, as I tried to in this article. If you call for Intifada, you should know what an Intifada is. There was an Intifada when I was growing up in the late 90s. There was one in the earlier 90s. But the second Intifada included suicide bombings against Israelis of the most gruesome type. I mentioned in that piece the 2001 bombing of the Dolphinarium nightclub in Tel Aviv, where a Palestinian suicide bomber detonated by a group of young women trying to get into the club. These women are were the same age as these women chanting for Intifada now at Columbia and in LA and in other reprehensible educational institutions in the US. I wonder if these students know that a suicide bomber went into the cafeteria of a university in Jerusalem in that same period and blew up and murdered, among other things, American students who were trying to have a cup of coffee in the middle of their studies. I wonder if these disgusting and ignorant kids at American universities have any idea that that's what they're calling for. And if they do, then they are morally lost to an extent that they probably could never come back from. But if they're just ignorant, which I really, really hope they are, I hope that, to steal one of the phrases they're so keen on using themselves, they do the work and realize what the words they chant actually mean.
Well, that's the question, and I do really worry that so many of them do have an understanding of what they're chanting for, because some of the justifications, the mad rationalizations we've heard in recent months send a chill up your spine. And we're seeing some craziness also from media folk who should know better. Even much of the left sees the absurdity of the LGBT groups for Palestine. I mean, they understand how ludicrous that is, but apparently that's lost on the Washington Post's Taylor Lorenz.
Many of the people in these marginalized groups, obviously, they are fighting for Palestine, right, for the Palestinians and for what's happening in Gaza. But yet, in Gaza, they would not have any freedom. You know,
they don't have freedoms in Texas and Florida. Does that mean?
But they don't. But I understand that. But Taylor.
Texas?
Oh my gosh, Douglas, I don't know exactly what rights gay people don't have in Texas and Florida, but even Don Lemon had to step in to bring some sanity to that discussion.
Taylor Lorenz is a complete airhead, know nothing. She's not a journalist, never has been. And unfortunately, the Washington Post has given her a berth of a kind where she does totally unimportant work and sort of just gibbers away about obsessions of her own. But you know, what she just said there is again a demonstration of a completely lost person, a morally lost person. She's so desperate to make her points such as she can about the Palestinians or Gaza that she honestly wants to not just deny what is happening in Gaza and in the Palestinian areas towards gay people and indeed all minorities. she has to find a way to get away from that unfortunate problem that the people she's essentially on the side of, Hamas, she's downplaying what they do, that they throw gay people off buildings and so on. She's downplaying that by saying, well, it's the same in Texas. You know, I'm pretty sure, I've been a fair amount to Texas. I love the great state of Texas. I'm pretty sure you can't just throw gays off buildings there. And I'm certain that if anyone tried it, they would be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And because actually also throwing people off buildings is, as a whole, in its entirety, illegal in the state of Texas. And not just the gays, you can't throw anyone off a building in Texas. So if Taylor Lorenz honestly wants to defend her apparently friends in Hamas to such an extent, she should realize that she should really find a new way of doing so, because all she's done here is tried to ignore the crimes of Hamas and actually smear the state of Texas, among others. And so, well, anyway, good luck to her with whatever grift she's got coming next. But it's a great shame, because the Washington Post used to be a fine paper and used to employ, and still does employ, some very good journalists. So they must be so embarrassed to have Lorenz among their midst.
Well, yeah, Washington Post isn't what it used to be. And before the Washington Post, she was at the New York Times. So she's been at some major publications, but that's the thinking right there. Let's talk a little bit about men-only clubs. The Garrick Club has succumbed to pressure and voted to allow women to become members for the first time in its 190-year history, Douglas. This is a famed club. It's said to be bitterly split on this issue, though. BBC World Affairs editor John Simpson last week tweeted that various Garrick Club members, including musicians Sting and Mark Knopfler and leading actors and producers, have reportedly written to the chairman saying they'll resign if the membership doesn't vote to accept women next Tuesday. That vote's taken place and women will be accepted. What's your take on this, Douglas? Is this fair enough that in 2024 we shouldn't have segregated spaces, or should men and women, if they opt to, be able to just be amongst their own and, I don't know, have some peace?
Yeah, I mean, you know, first of all, isn't it hilarious, Rita? The Guardian, you know, really at the forefront of the issues of our day. None of us will be free until everyone can join the Garrick Club, and until they discover that it's an exclusive club, that it takes years of waiting to be a member and you have to be recommended by people who are already members. It's so ludicrous. And such a sort of niche, ridiculously elite sort of argument that these people like The Guardian obsess about. I love John Simpson and Stephen Fry and these other celebrities. They joined an all-male club. I mean, they joined an all-male club, and now they're saying, unless we accept women after my 50 years of membership. I've just discovered that there are no women members in the club. It's appalling. I don't know how observant these people are. It's so ridiculous. I mean, my view is that if women want to join an all-women's club and men want to join an all-men's club, and by the way, women can come to the Garrick as guests if they want to and so on, it's not a big deal. There are some people going on about segregated spaces and so on. Well, I've got a challenge for them, and indeed a challenge for The Guardian. If you're worried about sex-segregated spaces, why don't you go to mosques up and down the United Kingdom and elsewhere and find rooms that women, Rita, are not allowed to go into? And this is a much bigger scale than the Garrick Club. The Garrick Club has quite a large membership, but I bet it's not the same membership as all of the mosques in the UK. And then they should go and they should make sure that every one of these male-only areas in mosques are having women introduced to them. So good luck to The Guardian, good luck to John Simpson, Stephen Fry, and the rest of them in the next step of your great crusade. After the Garrick, go for all of the mosques in the UK, and good luck, guys. You're going to need it.
And after they've done that, they can get onto the issue of workplace diversity, because you wrote a fantastic piece about that on in The Spectator this week. It's apparently crucial that every profession where white men dominate is diversified in every meaningful way. And I don't know how I missed this BBC splash. They've revealed train drivers are overwhelmingly in the UK white, male and middle-aged. Goodness me. And that just won't do, Douglas, will it? There needs to be change immediately.
It's completely shocking, Rita. You and I know that women dream of the thrill of becoming train drivers. They just thrill to the romance of the rail network, and so many, almost all women I know, desperately want to drive trains. And nobody will be free until 50% of people driving trains are women. And the other oddity of this, of course, is not just, it's the banality of the observation of the BBC's. Always this use of the term white as an insult. Of course, the majority of people who drive trains are likely to be male. There's a reason why it tends to be men, single men, standing at the end of train platforms, noting the numbers of trains. You don't often notice single women doing that. And then this obsession about the fact that they're white. Middle-aged, of course, that's a terrible thing to be. Presumably, if they were all octogenarians, that would be fine. But the white thing is where the BBC and others really want to attack here. Britain is an overwhelmingly white majority country. So it's sort of inevitable that in a job like driving a train, which is quite well paid, it's not a high status profession, but it's a necessary and important profession, it's sort of inevitable that most people would be white. I find when I go to China that most of the people driving trains there are Chinese. And when I've been to India, I noticed the appalling predominance of Indian train drivers. It's quite outrageous. And once again, the BBC should apply this extraordinary fact-finding that it does to these other places. None of us will be free until everyone can be a member of the Garrick Club, and every single train in the UK is driven by a black teenage transsexual. Clearly, that's the only way to solve the problem, Rita. You and I know it. It's systemic bigotry, and it must stop. And we can start with the Garrick, but we've got to move on to the mosques and then the trains and everything else.